You're afraid.
Of you.
Of death. You're the last one.
You were supposed to be the last. Stark asked for a savior and settled for a slave.
I suppose we are both disappointments.
I suppose we are.
Humans are odd. They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't be. But there is grace in their failings. I think you missed that.
They're doomed.
Yes. But a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts.
Art. It's not allowed to be conflicting, because then it isn't being honest to the human condition. For years, filmmakers have made personally conflicting work in the hopes that people will finally stop calling them pretentious, and instead say their penises are good enough for vaginas. Sometimes, directors engage in a movie-making process that is outright self-flagellating and hope that the high art film community will mindlessly accept their disingenuous displays of personal fault as something noble, and definitely maybe worth a small, shapeless, naked man made of gold. But films this personal belong on a certain media circuit and should never be conflated with blockbuster filmmaking. Blockbusters that attempt to relay any kind of personal stamp or philosophy are doomed to be perceived as inconsistent, pretentious, and very bad. That's why today we're talking about Marvel's worst movie, Age of Ultron, and why painstaking theological illusion is actually bad because people want the Hulk to smash. Joel Whedon is an atheist, which is bad, but even though it is bad, his atheism has led him to complex and nuanced storytelling, often involving themes associated with religion, such as death, morality, and the insatiable desire to want to fuck men 3 times your size. But Whedon's views on religion require contradicting storytelling, which requires solid foundational support.
One of the few times that I really got to sort of say exactly what I think about the world was in the second season of Angel, in episode 16, when he'd gone all dark, because he does that, and then he was getting better, and he basically decided that, the world, he'd been told the world is meaningless, nothing matters, and he said, well, then this is my statement, nothing matters, so the only thing that matters is what we do, which is what I believe. I believe that the only reality is how we treat each other. That morality comes from the absence of any grander scheme, not from the presence of any grander scheme. But then the next thing that somebody says to him is, well, you burst into my apartment without being invited, which a vampire can't do, which is like a little miracle. And I just sort of let that hang. I said the thing I believed in most, and then I contradicted it right away. Because ultimately it's the confluence or the conflict of those ideas that's actually really interesting.
We will first point out everything Whedon does to create the support, and then we will talk about why he is a failure and bad. In Age of Ultron, Toby Snark represents God, the entity responsible for everything and the only omnipotent presence waiting for my death with patient glee. Toby is trapped between his own God complex and the paternal desire to fix everything without actively being a part of it. He creates a legion of robotic guardians to watch the humans he has long presided over from his rich throne of money and power. Toby understands that his responsibilities are too great, and he must create an entity with its own discerning ability in order for human life to remain sustainable. He creates the artificial intelligence known as Ultron in the hopes that its decision-making abilities will be fruitful and will in no way backfire. Surprisingly, Ultron basically murders Toby's best friend Jarvis and proceeds to infect the rest of Toby's creations. Ultron becomes obsessed with the idea of creation and power while railing against the impulses and desires that are a part of his programming and attributed to the personality of Toby Snark.
It's just, I don't understand. Don't compare me with Stark. It's a thing with me. Stark he's a sickness.
Ultron seeks to rid the world of humanity, promising an evolution while secretly planning on the destruction of Toby's legacy. Angry with his inability to create, Ultron seeks a personal, corruptible human form that is equal parts human and equal parts divinical machine so he can finally beat Toby at his own game. Instead, the Avengers steal back this body and bring the Vision to life. The Vision, guided by the programming of Jarvis with the ambiguous cosmic energy source of the Mind Stone, engages in battle with the Avengers against Ultron and eventually defeats him. The entire main arc of the story follows the same one of the Bible. A powerful, seemingly all-knowing God devises free will among his creations. One of the creations revolts and leads the others to wreak havoc on his kingdom and humanity, while God's next noble creation is that of an individual that is surfacely human and yet something so much more, and saddled with the responsibility to destroy all evil and sin that was created out of free choice, but in order for all this to work, people have to believe in him and his resolute goodness. Basically, Joel Whedon plagiarized, idiot. There are other religious allusions written into the film as well, such as having Ultron's creation take place in the downstairs of Toby's building while he and his friends party upstairs. Later, Ultron ironically quotes the Bible.
Upon this rock, I will build my church.
And Vision does the same, but without the irony, I think.
I'm not Jarvis. I am.
Also, Whedon says this in the movie's commentary.
And of course, it comes right after he says, Jarvis, take the wheel. So clearly we're already leaning into the Jesus thing. And that's, again, not by accident. We're not saying anything specific about religion, but we are playing on Christian iconography a great deal.
But what does all of this have to do with anything in the movie? To answer that, we'll look at how other themes play off the central idea of biblical construction and how Whedon's conflicted storytelling ruins everything. The two main ideas of Age of Ultron seem to be fear and creation. The character of Scarlet-Girl gets into the minds of each Avenger and reveals their worst fears, in effect mentally crippling them and causing each to question their place and responsibility in the world. While Captain America finds himself as a man without a place in a war well beyond his faculties, Black Widow remembers the horrible ballet school she went to that had electives in murder and sterilization. It's worth noting that the movie does not tell us why Hulk is so afraid and angry, but does imply that it's Ed Norton's fault. The second theme of the movie, creation, is presented not just in Tony Stark and Ultron's arc, but also in Black Widow, Eagle-Eye, Hulk, Captain America, and Thor. Consider Black Widow and Hulk's farmhouse argument about being together, which ends in both regretting that they can't have children and how they feel inhuman because of it. Consider Captain America's longing to have returned to normalcy, where the promise of a family with Peggy Carter was waiting for him. Consider Eagle-Eye forced to confront his paternal responsibilities in the face of certain death. And consider how Thor wasn't in a well-created Thor sequel until Ragnarok. But ultimately, the themes of creation and fear are meaningless unless explicitly tied together. What are the implications of creating out of fear? What happens when our natural drives to create end up backfiring? Whedon has spoken out on his stance of creation in relation to filmmaking and writing before. In a 2012 Reddit AMA, when asked about how he feels about fan fiction, he responded with, "All worthy work is open to interpretations the author did not intend. Art isn't your pet. It is your kid. It grows up and talks back to you." This creates a very interesting juxtaposition with
This little bit that he says here is also really important in the theme, simply because one of the first things I ever wrote when sort of just freestyling about Ultron in my head was that children all kill their parents.
Age of Ultron was an exhaustive experience for Whedon, and he cited it as his reason for not returning to finish the franchise. But it is clear that Whedon has created a fundamentally personal film, and one rooted in comic book lore. While Whedon is content with his dirty atheism and humanism, he is also fighting a daily battle with his own perceptions of morality and what it means to create in both a metaphorical and physical sense. And in doing so, he finds the importance of contradiction, the resonance in a movie made by an atheist starring the two sides of God fighting passionately for a humanistic ideology and confronting humanity's faults and failings.
You're afraid
Of you.
of death. You're the last one.
You were supposed to be the last. Stark asked for a savior and settled for a slave.
I suppose we are both disappointments.
I suppose we are.
Humans are odd. They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't be. But there is grace in their failings. I think you missed that.
They're doomed.
Yes. But a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts. It's a privilege to be among them.
You're unbearably naive.
Well, I was born yesterday.
And that is how Joel Whedon's Age of Ultron uses personal contradiction to become Marvel's greatest film to date, which was my thesis from the beginning. Thank you. If you liked this, you can help me on Patreon. I'm really poor, and I make these videos, and so it's hard sometimes, but I'll do it. I'm doing it. I love you. Bye.